Good evening and welcome to another very special episode of Disqualified Dads. Now, this sort of stream, Disqualified Dads, I think at the moment is one of its kind, trying to bring the information and knowledge out there around the breakdown of the family unit, unfortunately. Now, I've got a very special guest coming on tonight. His name is Charlie Mccready. I will just quickly show you his Instagram page so you know who he is. This is Charlie. This is his Instagram page. Follow him, check him out. He's got a lot of work and he's done a lot of work around parental alienation, the steps to get around it, get over it, and sort of recover from alienation ultimately. So I will let Charlie go more into that. But before I bring Charlie on, just a quick announcement. I am now currently eligible to take super chats and super thanks. So those of you in the chat, feel free to send in some super chats and super thanks, and I will read out your comments or questions, obviously, because they will go straight to the top. Also, towards the end of the stream, so I'm going to bring Charlie on. We're going to obviously discuss this and dissect this. And towards the end of the stream, after about an hour's time, I'm going to put the link to the stream in the chat. If you've got any questions or you want to speak to Charlie, I will attempt to bring you on. So we'll leave that for the end of the stream. But without further ado, let me bring Charlie on. Charlie, it's been a long time overdue. Thank you for coming. And here we are finally. Tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about your background, how you got into this sort of arena, how you got into this work, and what you do exactly, and obviously your specialist knowledge.
Sure. And first of all, thanks, Farouk. And it's an absolute honor and a pleasure to be here with you this evening. So yeah, who am I? I am a parental alienation coach. So what is that? That is somebody who helps parents, so all genders, because men and women are both affected by this. I help them to deal with their particular experience of alienation to help them with their kids and also to help them with themselves. I've personally been through alienation, so that's I don't think anybody can understand what we're going through as alienated parents unless they've actually been there themselves. So I had 10 years of what I would call pre-alienation, which is basically the point before the gloves come off and you hit that separation with your partner, your ex-partner. And then I had 5 years of full-on alienation, which included 2 years of no contact with one of my kids. And then I've had another 10 years since then so another decade of just ongoing kind of repairing of the relationships. So, I would say to anybody, buckle up. This stuff takes a really, really long time.
You're in for a long ride.
Yeah. And the thing that I do that I think is a bit unique and different is I've tried to make what is a very complicated area as simple as possible for people so they can get their heads around, okay, what's going on and what are the tangible things that I can do. And I'm sure we're going to get into a lot more detail about exactly how that works this evening.
Okay, perfect, Charlie. That was very well covered, I must say. Right, there's one thing I picked up on straight away that's, I must say, triggered me, but I can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-alienation. So I would presume that as a layman, as you know, I'm a layman in this, all of this really, I'm just learning as I'm going along. Now, pre-alienation, my references to all of these things that I learn are from experience. I can discuss it with you from a point of experience. So I'm not qualified in anything, but ultimately I can be in the conversation due to life experience ultimately. Now, pre-alienation. So that is alienation that is taking place whilst you are still in the relationship, living with the children.
Yep.
I think that's a good place to start talking about alienation because that's where it starts. Let's talk about that. Tell me a bit about that, or tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so this is an area that some parents are aware of and other parents aren't. So some parents will acknowledge that, for instance, their partner is trying to stop them from having a close relationship with their kids. So the partner is basically controlling the relationship with the kids. And that's kind of quite overt, and you'll pick up on that. Other occasions, there's this kind of subtle negative narrative that starts gaining some momentum. I say in my case, it was like going on for a decade and got more and more overt as we got closer to a point of separation. But what's going on is that the alienating parents are kind of creating these bonds, these loyalty conflict bonds with the kids at a really early point in time. And so we often just don't even see this coming.
Yes.
This is one of the reasons that parents are surprised that when they get to a point in separation, or there's always a catalyst which kind of kicks the alienation off, but they're surprised that the kids just turn on a dime. And of course, the kids are not turning rapidly. This has been going on potentially for a very long time. And the difference is that the alienating parent has suddenly slammed in and said, right, you must absolutely make a decision now. And of course, the kid's pre-programmed to go with the alienating parent.
Yeah, see, okay. I need to be, obviously, as you know, I'm obviously getting family because I'll be careful how I say things, right? Yeah. Now, obviously, there's a client that I'm representing. So let's just say there's a client of mine that I'm representing now. His alienation, as he said, was happening while he was there. That was the frustration that eventually led to, and in order to carry out that alienation, there had to be an element of control.
Mm-hmm.
And for that element of control, to control these bonds with the children, you control who else they bond with. So this lady in question, control the relationships those children had with the father's side of the family. So, for example, this client of mine, his children's, how can I put it? His parents used to live 10 minutes from his house, right? But months would go by, his kids wouldn't see his parents. Whereas his wife's or his ex-wife's parents lived hour and a half drive away, but they spent more time with them. They had a stronger bond, and when they were there, they were like kids. They were happy and playing. And he noticed over time, whenever eventually he somehow managed to get the kids to his parents' home or his extended brothers, sisters, the kids had a lot of control around them. They couldn't just be kids and play. All these rules suddenly came into place. These control tactics. Now, at the time when this client of mine was in a relationship, it's very difficult to articulate this to someone else without losing your temper or get frustration would boil over, and then you look like the so-called abuser again or the angry partner. It is such a bizarre place to be. And the poor kids also in this relationship noticed that kids, when they're with daddy, they're having a great time, laughing, joking. Daddy says, you want to do this? Kids say yes. If the alienating parent didn't agree, all it needed was, and like I said, I learned about obviously that element of control, like you said, when they build that bond. One little look from mum, kids suddenly change their mind. And this client of mine couldn't figure out why. They were happy, wanted to do this. Next minute is one look, head down. So they constantly need reassurance from the alienating parent to give them that look to say, it's okay. No, it's not okay. You need to align with me. And unfortunately, as a father, when you step in to try and protect your kids from this, because listen, they're children, it's your job to protect them, you're worried about them. You are in such a position and situation, if you do anything, you'll be carted off by the police because you look like the abuser.
Yeah.
And you're in such a place, and people around you, the other thing, Charlie, you can confirm this maybe. When your friends and family around you look into it, oh, what a wimp, like, his wife, he can't even bring his kids around, what a wimp. Like, and you're thinking, I can't do nothing because if I do something or say something or kick off, I'm in a very volatile position where my kid, not even me, my kids will lose that. So for the sake of my kids, I have to be the sacrificial soldier, head down, and just carry on, sort of thing. I mean, what do you think about that?
So there's, from what you've just articulated, there's a lot going on. I have a really simple framework, which I think helps people enormously to kind of get their heads around the complexity of it. Because I say it's complex, it's counterintuitive, and people outside of it haven't got a clue about parental alienation. So top tip for all the parents listening: the other people who are advising you are basing their advice on the world as they know it and understand it, which is kind of a normal situation and a normal parenting situation. So please don't listen to them because they don't know what they're talking about. But there are three key parts to alienation. The first one is, what is your kid going through? And
Yes.
I encourage every parent to put themselves in the shoes of their child. So I talk about the spectrums. So there's a spectrum which is, what is the character of your kid? You know, are they independent? Are they more malleable? How much are they being alienated? So there's mild, which is they might be a little bit uncomfortable or rude with you, but you can just say that you can see they're not comfortable. There's moderate, where they can start being quite belligerent with you. Your kind of parent-child relationship starts breaking down. And then you've got severe, which is where
So,
you have no contact with them at all. Go on.
okay, so what was it? Would that happen while you're with them? But that bit would only, like, for example, they would only get belligerent after say that one parent has exited the family home, or it can happen
It,
during
it
while
can
you're still there.
it can happen during. So this pre-alienation phase, you don't get so much of the severe alienation, but you often get quite a lot of the moderate, even building towards severe. I mean, there are a lot of kids who are encouraged by the alienating parents, even when you're in the relationship with that parent, to undermine you as a person, you know, to say, oh, well, the decisions that you make are wrong. The parenting style that you have is wrong. The things that you do, the things that you enjoy in your life are wrong. So things that are associated with you are starting to be put into a negative vein, including the stuff you were talking about with your client's family. You know, again, it was like the implication is, well, they're not such good people to hang out with. Hang
Yes.
out with my family. So that first layer is the kids, and we'll come back into that as well. So layer one, kid, put yourself in your kid's shoes. Layer two, you. So we come into this with a bunch of our own limiting beliefs, insecurities, and vulnerabilities as people. We have a lot of strength, but we also have a lot of past memories of our ourselves. So we tend not to be as confident and as forceful as we might be. We tend to be quite empathetic. We're strong people, but we also tolerate far too much. You know, our boundaries are not as strong as they should be, which ends up getting us into trouble. We will come back into this.
Okay.
Our past memories and our past experiences play heavily into how we experience alienation. So that's the second part, us. And then the third part is the alienator. And they're also on the spectrum. So the type of person, the type of character they are, and the extent to which they're prepared to alienate the children will have a massive impact on your kids' experience and your experience. So some alienators are kind of at the lower end of the spectrum. They're more malleable. They're kind of pushing the boat out a bit, but they won't go too far. And if somebody puts them in check, especially the law, they'll stop. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum where they are just doggedly determined to make your life a living hell. There is no compromising, and they will breach any court order. Short of putting these people in jail, they're not going to give up making your life as difficult as possible. So when parents are looking at their situation, they've got to look at all three layers and work
Okay.
where they are on the spectrum. And it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. So everybody's picture is going to be slightly different from everybody else's. I call it uniquely similar. So we're all unique, but we're all similar. And
Yes.
my job is to help people to work out where they are on each of those spectrums. Bearing in mind, each of your kids will be in a different place on their spectrum. So working out what the dynamic is of your particular experience, and then you can start looking at solutions that should help you.
Yeah, Charlie, that's very well articulate, that framework you just come up with. I've never like heard it or seen that framework in that angle, and you're obviously quite an in-depth knowledge. So let's start with, because I think there's a lot to dissect and unpack here. Yeah, and I don't want to miss anything. So let's start with the child then, for example. Yeah,
Yep.
so the child's perspective, and if you go back to what we both said about alienation on and off camera, for example, that child pre-alienation, say for 10 years, so say for argument's sake, someone's in a relationship for 10 years, they have one child who's now say 10. So that child has only known alienation from childhood. So when you say it depends on the character of that child, how malleable they are, how resilient they are, what their personality is like, but then 0 to 7 is the pre-programming of any child of who they will become. So
including us.
yes. So that alienation from 0 to 10, will that not have a direct impact on their personality, how risky they are, how daring they are, how happy, malleable, sad? Like, can you
Huge.
explain a bit more into that?
Huge. Yeah. So I mean, again, it really depends on the degree to which the child has been alienated, and also how they've experienced you as a kind of a balancing force in their life. But for some children, they become very enmeshed, as they call it, which is basically they take on the kind of the perspective and almost like the character of the parent who's trying to control them. And you won't always see the degree of enmeshment in that kind of pre-alienation stage. It might not be that obvious because the child loves you and they kind of feel a bit uncomfortable sometimes being in your company, but most of the time they still love you, but you don't always get to see what's really going on. It's only when the relationship comes to an end and then the child has been put under a lot of pressure. And so we have to kind of think, okay, what is the kid going through? Because the alienation can start at any age. It can have been going on for a short period, a long period. If they've got siblings, some of the pressure might be kind of shared. If you've got, 2 kids or 3 kids, very often we'll see families, we'll see alienation where one kid in particular is a target. So sometimes it's the older kid, sometimes it's a favorite kid, sometimes
Target child, yeah,
it's all the kids. This is part of the dynamic. But what we experience as parents is the kids' coping mechanisms. So when you see a kid being uncomfortable with you, that's because they're being told you're a bad parent. They might be persuaded that you're unsafe to be with. That's one of the favorites of the alienators. You can't be with this person they're not safe to be with, or they kidnapped you, or they abused you. There'll be loads of false allegations, loads of negative narrative. So these children have been developing this kind of, as you say, formative view about who you are, and they won't express it to you. So the biggest no-no with kids, do not talk about alienation. Okay. Now, one of the problems is if you're defending yourself as a parent, you're kind of talking about alienation. So the kid's in a fear-based relationship with the alienating adult, which is why they have to constantly appease that adult. So if you start saying something like, oh, well, I'm not that sort of person, I'm not a bad parent, you're basically saying to the kid that what they've been told is a lie. So that's going to go against the loyalty conflict, or that's going to go against their demanded loyalty from the alienating parent. So you'll find your kids getting angry with you. You'll find your kids withdrawing from you. You'll find your kids don't want to engage with you. You'll find your kids are completely different when the alienator is around, because now they're in a stark contrasted world between, here's the person who's telling me I must not be speaking with you. So we tend to see all these kind of negative, we see our children detaching from us, and we can't understand why. And it's all these coping mechanisms coming out.
Okay, so Charlie, so I'll ask this question now as we're going along, as we go through each sort of position, right? So if you find yourself now, so let's say someone's listening to this stream now, they're still in the family unit, and they recognize some of these things, and they are the target parents. Call it the target parent.
Yeah.
If they notice some of these signs, what are they to do? I mean, any practical steps or advice? If they notice some of this, what options have they really got?
Yeah, the big problem you have with the alienators is they're on a very determined path to try and damage your relationship with your kid. So if you want to stop the real damage going on, you've got to stop the alienation itself. But there is the challenge, because we know that the alienators are very uncompromising people. And if you go up and you kind of tackle them about the fact that they're doing something that undermines you as a parent, they often see that as, oh, that's good, that's working, I'll do more of it. They tend not
Right.
to back down and change. So in you raising it with your partner, you can actually make it worse. And it might get better, but they kind of also know that you're now affected by it, you're hurt by it, that's a weakness for you. And this stuff is counterintuitive, but what you always should do with an alienated child, either when you're in a relationship or outside the relationship, be really empathetic with them, be really loving with them, even when they're being difficult with you. And this is something that a lot of parents get kind of very caught up in, because we are feeling so bad about ourselves with what's happening with our kids. One of the reactions that we do is we get angry, we respond inappropriately, we get triggered. And when that happens, we're not looking at what does the kid need from me. We must always be putting ourselves in the kid's shoes. So
Right. Okay.
when a kid is being belligerent with us, they still want us to love them. They still want us to support them. And when we don't do that, the kid now feels that we're rejecting them, even though we feel like they're the ones who are rejecting us. So we've got to be like superhuman. And I would say with every parent, if you've got contact, even though it's really uncomfortable, keep going. Because once you lose contact with your kids, if that were to happen to you, it's really difficult to rebuild. Because the kids can cut off, they can block you, and then you're reliant upon them deciding when they come back into your life. At least when they're in your life, and we'll talk about role models and stuff like that, at least when they're in your life, you can still be the parent that you want them to experience. You can provide a degree of balance and you can still influence them, but it's very subtle. You can't sit down and tell them what values you want them to have that are important to you. You've got to live and breathe those values. You've got to be the person that's the role model that they look up to. So it's quite a long explanation, but
Yeah. Okay, Charlie. So, all right. So that's from the child's. We have some insight into the child's perspective. Now, something you said about the targeted parent,
yeah,
which, from a coaching terminology, like you said, you're looking at it through your own filters and how you dissect the situation from your own programming. So
yeah,
let's just talk a little, to explain a bit more
yeah,
about that then. Yeah.
yeah. So one of the first up, most parents who are going through alienation, you end up on what I call the emotional roller coaster. So basically, you suddenly find yourself without your kids, or the relationship with your kids has been damaged. And especially if you're not seeing your kids very often. So you go through, there are 9 symptoms that we typically all experience. There's grief, there's because we're missing our kids, there's guilt, because we think, did I do enough? For women in particular, there's shame, but men feel that as well. Shame that you kind of, the people around you are being critical of you.
Yeah.
All those things lead to isolation, because nobody else gets this stuff. Your mates don't get it, your family don't get it. Then there's powerlessness, because whatever we do is turned against us. There's injustice, because they just get away with this stuff. Literally the legal system, nobody's supporting you. That leads us to anger. And we also feel anxiety and we feel fear. And the person who's alienating us puts us into that kind of mindset, that it's almost like a hamster on a wheel, because your conscious mind starts thinking fear, grief, guilt, shame, injustice. and your subconscious mind works with whatever you give it. So
Okay.
your conscious mind is going, I'm now feeling grief. And so your subconscious goes, Farouk, you want me to do something about grief. Give me a couple of hours, I'll be back to you. So it does. It comes back. So you're now sleeping and you'll wake up and you'll be feeling, achy chest. You're going to be tense. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be fearful. You're going to be feeling guilty. You're going to be thinking about the injustice. You're putting yourself through the ringer. It might not be when you're asleep. It might be when you're trying to do your job, or you're driving or commuting to work. You might be eating a meal. You might be out with your mates in the pub. It's just, it'll suddenly pop back out. Now you're thinking again about grief and guilt and isolation and injustice and everything else. In doing that a second time, you've asked your subconscious to have another go at it. And it goes, Farouk, you want me to still think about grief, guilt, and all these other things? I'll do that for you. Give me a couple of hours. I'll be back. It does. And it pops back up another couple of hours. And you, as parents, you go round and round and round and round. And you're just in this mess the whole time. But So a big part of what I help people with is to change your focus so that you're no longer looping around, because you're put onto that hamster wheel, that emotional roller coaster by your ex. But the only person who can take you off is you.
Yes.
And the crazy thing is, and I'm guessing you've had this experience personally, the crazy thing is you end up self-perpetuating being on the hamster wheel.
Yes. I'll tell you how I articulated this, Charlie, and how I articulated to fathers I sort of mentor. You're on a roller coaster. Ultimately, you've been put on this roller coaster, the biggest roller coaster and the biggest theme park you've ever been to. First and foremost, you got to belt up, brace up, and hold on for dear life. It's going to throw you up and down and wild and side to side, and every moment's will be stable, and then it'll be back up and down. My job is to firstly get you off that roller coaster, slowly work you out towards the exit, eventually till I get you out and we've left the theme park, and now you're in a safe space on your own. At least you're not going to be sick, you're not going to get thrown off, you're not going to fly off and unalive yourself. You're just in a safe space. That's my theory. I said, so you're the worst roller coaster you're ever going to go on. And when you said that, every 2 hours you say to yourself that grief and it comes back, I call it the daily fog. I mean, I've given this my own terminology. I said that daily fog is going to hit you at some point somewhere. So constantly. You might, and this is what I've said, you could go to bed by the evening feeling really positive, especially I would say in the early times when you've lost contact with your kids, right? You go to bed thinking, you know what, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to get through this. But when you wake up in the morning, you've started all over. You're back at the start of the theme park on the first ride. You start all over again. It is a very difficult road, and there's long days and nights ahead, especially those early, I think, few months of when you've lost contact. And the guilt, could I have done more? Should I have stayed there? Because the pain of separation, and knowing then alienation is going on full steam ahead, you think to yourself that perhaps things. I mean, when you're in it, it's bad enough, but when you get this added pain afterwards, you start doubting yourself. Should I have carried on? Should I have carried on for the sake of the kids? At least, okay. Even if there was pre-alienation going on, what would you say to this? Even if there was pre-alienation, your presence alone would have. How can I put it, countered that slightly. Just you being present and having little time with your children would have countered that alienation, the fact that you're just present.
Absolutely. I think just that presence is so important, because your kids are still, even if they're teenagers, even if they're young adults, or even if they're small kids, everybody still picks up on the way that everybody else is acting. We all do it naturally. They pick up on your energy. They pick up on what you say. They pick up on if you're sad and depressed. They pick up on just your confidence level. They pick up on how you conduct yourself, your values, like every layer. So the way that I encourage parents to keep positively influencing their kids is to do it by who they are, who is the person the kid is experiencing. And a complete no-no for parents, from my perspective, is please don't be the sad, depressed parent. And this is a really tough one for parents, because we get it in our heads that unless we show the kids that we miss them, that we feel bad about them, that we have to kind of show them that we're being overly sad, all you're doing is you're guilt tripping your kid. Because your kid knows that they are past, deep down, they have some sense of recognition that the pain you're going through is as a result of your current relationship with them. And so if you rock up as the sad, depressed parent, you're going to guilt trip the kid. And also, you're not much fun to be with from the kid's perspective. So you have to go the other way. And this is counterintuitive. We have to be the confident, life-embracing, strong parent. And this is one of the problems we have with that roller coaster, because it's us giving ourselves permission to get off the roller coaster,
Right.
leading you to the exit, but we don't give ourselves permission because we say, well, I've got to put all my attention onto my kid. And the bit that we miss is, it's like the analogy of the airplane crash. You have to put your oxygen mask on first in order to help anybody else on the airplane. And what we do is we're trying to put the oxygen mask on the kids, and we're starving ourselves and we're depleting ourselves. And that's not good for us, and it's not good for our kids.
Okay, so would that, okay, so sorry to cut in there, Charlie. So would that be the same as saying, to a certain degree, that even though as a parent you're in a terrible situation, look, the worst pain I think any human being can experience is a loss of a child.
Yeah.
You've lost contact with a child, you are going through that bereavement daily. So you are a victim of this, but is it the fact that you have to, as a parent, say, I'm not the victim here, my child is a victim, hence I need to step out of this victim complex and say, right, I need to take my best foot forward, become that brave person, to put the child first and think, I got to stop playing the victim, basically.
So let's go another layer deeper. So grief, guilt, powerlessness, isolation, all of those things, they're words that we use in common. The reality is, it's your version of grief. It's your version of guilt.
Okay.
It's your version of isolation. And what's really going on, as I said, we all come into our adult lives with our own baggage. We have insecurities, we have vulnerabilities, we've had bad experiences, we've got limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And basically what happens with alienation is that the insecurities that we have, which we've done a very good job at oppressing for a long time, they all come up to the surface. Because
from the subconscious mind, you're pre-programming in coaching, like they say. So all of this is there in the subconscious. They just come out to the surface because of this trauma. Will bring them to the surface.
Yes. So I'll give you a couple of examples. If we had a parent who was a bit aloof and not very supportive, it might have been a dad, it might have been a mum, but if we had one of our parents that we always had to kind of look up to and get their approval because they never gave us the love that we needed as a child ourselves, so we were always looking for that love. But it also depleted us a little bit in terms of our confidence levels coming into our adult lives. So we don't like conflict and stuff like that, for instance, which of course the alienators do. But so if we have this desire where we look for approval from other people, which is why we don't like conflict, we can be people pleasers. When we go through alienation and then suddenly our kids are rejecting us, guess what? We start looking for approval from our kids. And that can have a massive impact on the parent-child relationship, which is shifting anyway, because the alienator is basically adultifying the kid in a lot of instances. So what's really going on is we are we're re-experiencing trauma or bad experiences where we're now afraid of losing our kids because we were never given the support when we were young.
Okay, that's
And if you want, say, you really have to look deep inside yourself. So I'll give you another example. All of us have got these massive expectations about what life with our kids was going to be. And so pretty much as soon as our kids are born, or from quite an early age, we've kind of mapped out the next 20 years, 30 years of their life. We've kind of said, this is what they're going to be like when they're 10, this is what they're going to be like when they're 20, this is what they're going to be like when, they're getting older. And that's like again, it's all in your subconscious. It's a blueprint. And what happens when we go through alienation is that our experience with our kids doesn't match the blueprint. Our expectations are out of kilter, and it gives us an enormous amount of pain. Huge.
misalignment. The misalignment causes pain.
Yeah. And we generally have, I refer to triggers and blockers. So triggers is something that upsets you and you go, oh wow, okay, and you automatically feel your physiology change. You get that mental fog, your pulse might start going up, your brain stops working, you can't really respond properly, because you're just reacting, and it's based on fear of past experiences. Anything that triggers you, go find out what that stuff is, because it's affecting you with your alienation experience right now. So you want to dig up all your triggers. The other thing is blockers, which fits of expectations, because the blocker is, and this will be you not wanting to deal with the reality of your situation. And that's one of the things that we have to do as alienating parents. We can't sit there and say, this is, this needs to change. This has got to change right now. It's not going to change quickly, typically. We're on something that takes a long time to fix. And there's a part of us that doesn't want to accept that. And so that's a blocker for us. And it hurts us because it's not fitting with our expectations, which is all this stuff is sitting in your subconscious.
Okay, Charlie, let me try and let me see how I can tackle this now. Okay, look, so everything you said, right, that you've directly linked with alienation currently. So the word you used was pre-alienation, and what's the other term? Says post-separation alienation. So pre-alienation while you're in the relationship, and then alienation that goes on while you have no contact. So once you lose contact with the child, that alienation.
But you can have alienation with contact.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So my bad. Yeah. So what I mean is, so you'll have it with contact. So
no contact as
so
well.
yeah. So you've got pre-alienation. Then when you've lost contact with the children, you've got that alienation, and then once you regain contact with the children, is that continued alienation even whilst you have contact. So could you say that is ultimately three forms or three scenarios that alienation can occur in at different spectrums? Yes.
Yeah. So I think so. I look at them as being like 4 stages. So very, very similar to what you described. The first one, the pre-alienation, the build-up. Then there's alienation begins. So that could be you. So that's the kid now starting to get like properly alienated, being a lot more obstreperous. There's a third stage, which was you having to deal with a kid who's being properly, majorly alienated or minorly, anywhere between moderately and severely alienated, you having to deal with that. And then the fourth stage is where the kid starts understanding and healing from their experience of alienation.
Right.
Because you can't force a child to just kind of go, oh, I've been alienated for the last 10 years. Oh, I feel fine now that I recognize that. That's not how it works. That the process that our children go through, very often it doesn't even start, if it does, until they're kind of in their mid-20s. Sometimes it's much later in life. And they've now been programmed. So I talked about us coming into our lives as adults with all this crap that other people
Mhm.
very kindly put in our heads. We're basically walking around just repeating stuff that our parents and other people put
That
in
we've
our heads.
absorbed, as we've
Yeah,
grown,
all
in
their
our
issues, all their
environment.
limiting beliefs. That's the root cause of most of this stuff that we're now experiencing as fear and insecurities, which we then experience through our kids through alienation. But for the kids,
Excuse me.
they've now been subconsciously programmed as well. So even when they start having, say you've lost contact with them for 1 or 2 years, when you start having contact with them again, it's often because they've decided that they do want that relationship with you, because there's this deep layer of love for typically our kids do love us. It's just that they're not being given permission by the alienator to love us, and then the kids withhold their own permission to love us because
Right.
subconsciously they're still afraid that the alienator is going to punish them. So you end up with this kind of this strange situation where the kid reaches out to you, you meet the kid, but they now have this internal fight going on because their conscious mind is saying, I want to have a relationship with my dad or my mom. And their subconscious is saying, but this is not a safe person. This is a bad person. This is somebody that you've experienced a lot of hurt as a result of that person. And the kids, I mean, a lot of them won't go to therapy, but I would encourage our kids, a great thing to do as a parent, that, general well-being, mindfulness, try and get your kids into that stuff because it'll
Okay.
start helping them down that road of recovery. They have to be old enough, clearly.
Yeah. Okay, Charlie. The only thing that comes to mind is, okay, so with everything you've covered, I mean, so you mentioned age at one point. You did cover it slightly. We said, well, when the kid gets about 20, maybe. So is some of this stuff age dependent? Because ultimately, look, if the child is, say, let's say, what's a young adult, 15, 16, where they're aware of the environment, they're going to school, they're learning about the world and society from different people, they're absorbing different ideas away from the alienator, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're away from the alienator. Now there's the gap between when they've lost contact with this other parent who they were pre-alienated against, and then there's full-blown alienation once you're out of the picture. Then they've got their own ideas where they're mixing in the world, they're seeing other families and parents. I mean, at what point do you think it would? I mean, and then depends also at what age have you got contact back with those children to then start working on some of these things. I mean, the question I'm asking really is because alienation can last a lifetime.
Yeah.
Now, you hear stories about kids in their 20s, they hate their,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of cases where they hate their dad, they don't want to know him, they know about the world. But, and sorry, going to the point that I was trying to make was also that guilt. Is there an element of guilt they feel because they were, from a young age, they're programmed to be loyal to the only parent that's around. So from a young age, they're scared that I don't want to lose the
Yeah.
only. They came home one day, one parent's disappeared, dad's disappeared, right? Yeah, he's no longer
Yeah.
around. You know, then is there an attachment that subconsciously you're scared of losing the only parent that you have left, so they feel guilty to give themselves permission to then, like you said, permission to bond or
I,
with
I,
the
I, I
target parent.
I think what happens is basically the alienating parent creates this loyalty conflict where
Yes.
the narrative is it's you and me. We're together. The other parent, and they'll start undermining the other parent. So that
Mhm.
but the kid also knows that the alienating parent will punish them if they don't align with them. So it's carrot and stick. So
Mm.
on the one side, when you appease the alienating parent, something positive might happen in your life. But as soon as you cross the alienating parent, something bad's going to happen in your life. Now, that might be
Mm.
physical punishment, invariably not, but it tends to be psychological punishment.
Yes.
So, they might be nasty to you. They might stop you from having certain privileges. They might stop you from going out.
Mm.
But they will do something that punishes you. So
Yes.
and we know this ourselves because we're dealing with the alienators as our partners. We have to keep them happy as well, because if they don't get their way, They're going to do something that mucks our life up. And so the kids are basically in the same situation as us. So I think the question you were asking is there a point in time where they kind of wake up and they snap out of it?
Yes.
And the simple answer is there's no kind of definable point. And you would be surprised for teenage kids, if they're moderate to severely alienated, they just want to be, a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old. They've got enough going on in their life. Their bodies are changing. They're becoming an adult. They've got all this pressure from social media. They've got all their schoolwork. They've got all their mates to worry about. Their life is full without having to deal with alienation as well. And so they're just putting up these coping mechanisms to get themselves through this with the least pain possible. And unfortunately, the price is very often that means they have to exclude us. Because if they don't, the alienating parent will make their life a living hell. They won't be able to see their mates. They won't be able to use social media. They'll be embarrassed in front of their friends. And so, the kids are still being bombarded with alienation right the way up until, potentially for some of them, the whole of their life.
Yeah, that's scary. It's a scary thought. I mean, also, the other type of, like with the alienation, so there's the reward and the punishment, like you said, but there's the positive reinforcement where you're positively reinforcing the fear with like, don't worry, say, mummy will never leave you. Here's an extra dessert. It's me and you against the world. Let's have an extra dessert with love bombing. Again, classic term, love bombing. And reinforcing it with a positive action, extra dessert, mummy's here, and reinforcing that fear. I mean, that's obviously when a child's young, ultimately you can do more of that, but you've pre-programmed them forever. That's why alienation obviously lasts a lifetime. Charlie, I've got my first super chat. I need to read it out. So let me just read it out.
Please do.
Paternity Fraud UK, £5 from my mate Mike. This is a question for Charlie. Right, question for you, Charlie. What do you say to radical feminists who say that parental alienation doesn't exist?
I would be very rude at that point in time. So there are some groups out there at the moment who are basically saying this stuff doesn't exist, and the claim is that the men are perpetrators of physical abuse against the woman and against the kids. There probably are some instances where men are doing that, but there are also instances, that alienation is a real thing. Anybody who has experienced alienation will attest to that, and we can describe in great detail what that experience is like. What we lack greatly is that the psychologists haven't yet recognized it for reasons that are still beyond most of us. Until that happens,
Charlie, hello?
what is a pathology and what isn't, until they recognize it, the other psychologists are not going to be trained up. The broader set of practitioners and therapists are not going to be trained up. The legal system is not going to be trained up. The social services are not going to be trained up. The police are not going to be trained up. So the way that we have to basically find mechanisms for, and I know lots of people are trying to do this, but we have to find mechanisms for having the legislation changed so that it is recognized. But these people are vehement that it doesn't exist. And I know I've had run-ins with them, and I know lots of other practitioners have had run-ins with them as well. And they just refuse to accept it's a real thing because it suits their purposes of, which is admirable, protecting women from domestic violence. I'm glad that they're doing that, but they're doing it in such a bad way.
Charlie, let me ask you a quick question on that here while you're on the subject now. I mean, like you said, the psychologists, there's educated people who are not willing to recognize this. The authorities, like I said, we're in England, 2024, so-called civilized world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's still beyond belief that this is being shut down. I mean, do you think there's a bigger agenda behind this to not even want to protect the children. Forget the fathers or the non-resident parent. No one cares. Fine, we accept it. No one cares. Yeah. But surely, with all of this talk about the free world and the world that is we are the sort of first world country, all of these sort of rhetoric, we rule England sort of rule 3/4 of the world and whatnot, rules, systems, processes. Why do you think there is such a strong force against recognizing this? I mean, I just think it's too easy to say, well, no, they're protecting women. I think it's hard. Look, it's hard to. I'm not a conspiracy theorist by nature, but it's very easy to start looking at this and think, listen, what's going on there?
So I think there's different things going on in places such as the US. There actually seems to be quite a lot of corruption built into the system. Even with the way that judges are appointed, and it's not very independent. I think we're more independent here in the UK. But what I think is really going on, I did actually as a job, I ended up lobbying government. And the thing that I was lobbying government, in fact, I'm still trying to do it today. I started off on a journey 14 years ago trying to lobby the government. And I now know what you need. So first of all, you need money, because without money, you can't put dedicated resource onto it. So you have to have people who are just on this 24/7. Those people then need to go off and get support. So unless you've got a proven body of support, you can't take the next step, which is then to go off and persuade decision makers that this is a real thing. Then you need to go off and persuade the decision makers. The problem you have there is that they're constantly changing. So you have to pin down, ideally, if you want to change the laws, so you're going to have to get to the minister who's going to change the law, and you need to get into the judiciary. So you've got at least two bodies of decision making going on there to try and influence, plus the House of Lords. These people are changing constantly. I mean, if you think about ministers in the UK, they're in and out every couple of years. So then you think, okay, the civil service will look after me. No, the civil service get rotated every 2 to 3 years. So what happens is you end up in this constant loop of educating people, building that support, getting them to the point of saying, okay, we'll actually do something. And then the next person comes into office. So as I say, I've been 14 years on one piece of legislation that we've been trying to get changed. I think we got really close to it last summer, and then we've kind of slipped away again. And I think it might be another few years before we actually get that passed. So that's one part of the problem. And because we don't have the coordination, we don't have the money, we don't have the coordination, and we're certainly not getting into the right people right now. That's why it's not changing. I think what's also happened is that alienation is as a result of higher divorce rates, because alienation didn't really exist when families were all holding together. There was a lot of turmoil within. There might have been pre-alienation, but it wasn't to the same degree as we experience it today. And now that there are these very high levels of divorce, and it's become a social norm, it's all kicked off. And so society is kind of lagging behind in terms of its understanding. So there's a lack of education. The lack of education is also helping the fact that the legislators aren't recognizing it. And you then got groups who are saying that it doesn't exist. There's quite a few dynamics that are holding back change from happening. And for all the parents who are listening today, I would say, please don't hold your breath and wait for the system to change. You have to get on and deal with this today as best you can. And if we can do stuff that if there's things that we can do that can change it for the next generation, that's a more sensible target. I hate to be negative, but this is like 10 to 20 years away before this stuff all really changes.
Wow.
Based on experience. I know. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm really direct and honest with people.
Okay, Charlie, let's, before I move on, let me just read out some of these comments. Let's read a few more comments out, right? So, firstly, shout out to Mr. Daniel Ryan. He's put a comment in saying the family court system is failing in this area. The judiciary either dismiss or trivialize the issue. When will we see change? Shout out to Mr. Ryan. He's a Mackenzie. He's sort of my right hand man in this sort of area, the regular podcast. Little comment from Flying Horse. How can we reverse the effects of parental alienation in children? What can we do if this is currently going on actively at the moment?
So that is the biggest question probably that any parent wants to know. The answer that I'm going to give you is not the one you want, which is we have a limited amount of influence over the alienating parent, because basically it's like being in a bare knuckle fist fight with both arms tied behind your back. If you start trying to bring your child on board onto your side, the alienating parent is going to, they'll be even more vociferous. They will always take more action than we will, because it's the nature of the person. So if trying to win a fight with somebody who is prepared to do as much damage as possible to the kids, you can't win that. The thing is, we care about our kids. The alienators just see them as weapons. So in those situations, you can't, if you try to do the same as them, you're going to lose. The other thing that is going on, so you have to be really, really careful with this. If you try to reverse the alienation by telling your kid that that the other parent is the bad person, that it's not you, the kid is now in this massively conflicted position where you're saying one thing and the other parent is saying something else. And you are going to lose against this other parent, typically, because they will hurt your kid and you're not prepared to have that happen. If you're prepared to have your kid destroyed, then you might be able to turn the alienation around, but you're really going to do some serious psychological damage to the kid. So you have to accept, to some degree, and this is not the answer people want to hear, but it is the reality. You have to accept to some degree that you can't stop this process. What you can do is you can be what I call the role model. So be the parent, be the real parent that you want to be. So don't be spending all your time defending yourself, because that's about you and your issues, and you're not putting yourself in your kid's shoes. Spend your time supporting your kid, loving your kid, maintaining the relationship as best you can, because what you're doing is you're building up foundational blocks for the future, and the alienator is less influential. So you have to look at this as being a war which goes on for a very, very long time. We get very caught up in trying to win the battle, and when we do, it often doesn't turn out well for us, because when we start defending ourselves, we push our kids away. So it's actually counterproductive trying to reverse some of the effects of alienation. The best thing you can do is let the kids see you for who you are, but that means you need to be in good shape. We talked about the oxygen mask before. If you're a sad, depressed, angry parent, the kid is not going to want to spend time with you. If you are a strong parent, if you rise above what's being said about you, the kid will recognize that actually you don't believe that. You don't need to defend yourself, because it's not true. You're a strong parent. They'll still be rude to you. They're still going to find it difficult to spend time in your company. You're still going to see all of those behaviors, but you will, I promise you, you will know by acting strongly, not putting pressure on them and not putting boundaries on them, but just being supportive. That is laying the foundations for the point in time that you can then start rebuilding relationships later on.
So, Charlie, what I'm reading from this is, Charlie, then, when you're with the kid, so let's say, before I move on to the next question, right, when you're with the child, don't spend your time defending yourself. Just be the parent, have fun, do kid normal stuff. Don't get tangled into defending yourself and trying to change the narrative of what they've been fed. Just be yourself, be normal. Don't try and overcompensate to try and fix this effectively. Yes.
Yes. So being normal is a really important point, because again, I talked about our personal insecurities. So because we don't see the kids that much, when we do see them, we expect way too much of the kids. So if they're on their telephone, we get upset because we think that they're rejecting us. Or if they want to spend some time with their mate, we get upset because we think they're rejecting us. You know, you have to give the kids some degree of being able to go to their room, being able to be on their telephone, being able to watch TV, just being normal. Because if you're this like really needy parent, which we become because we get angry when they're not dedicating their time to us, that's not normal. If they lived with you, they wouldn't be dedicating their time to you. There's nothing normal about the way you're behaving. But also, I say to parents, because injustice is a huge one for us. That's probably one of the biggest killers. It kills our heart. You have a tongue for two reasons. You have a tongue so you can communicate to other people, and you have a tongue so you've got something to bite down on when you need to shut up. So when you feel those triggers coming up, you know, this is why you really have to become a conscious thinking parent. So when a trigger comes up, you catch yourself and you don't react. You catch yourself, you give yourself a moment, and then you say, okay, right. I just got triggered there. That's not good. Right. What does my child really need from me? So if your kid is pushing you, your kid's being belligerent, your kid is treating you like you're the kid, you still need to rise above it. You need to be the bigger person. You still be the parent, still be the support, empathetic love and kindness. That's what they want from you. Doesn't matter what they're showing you, that's what they want from you. And that's how you help your kids, bottom line.
Perfect. Charlie, we've got a lot to get through, so let's move along a little bit. I've got another super chat with a question, so let's read it out. Question from Paul Clifton from the US, I'm presuming, $10 super chat. Right, question is, severe alienation, no contact in person, phone call, video chat for over 4 years. Children are now 19 and 16. Children send PayPal requests for money. What would you recommend doing, Charlie?
Yeah, this is another really, really good one. Give them the cash. Give them the cash. We feel like we're being used, and it's a horrible feeling because our relationships can become very, very transactional. And the reason I say give them the cash is if they lived with you, you would give them the cash.
Okay.
And what we're feeling, again, this is us and our emotions and our triggers, because we're feeling that loss and we're feeling insecure, we're feeling that we're not being respected, and we're feeling they're just using us. And it's our feelings, and we have to move beyond that, because if you have to kind of act as if they're with you. If they were with you, you wouldn't think twice about it. You'd give them the money. If you don't give them the money, then that will be used against you.
Right. Okay.
The other parent will turn around and say, you've abandoned them. You don't care. And I would just do all the things that, just do all the right things for your kids. And at some point in time, you might, I'm sorry for this guy who's asked the question, 19 and 16, you might have to wait quite a long time yet to come for this to start getting better. Quite often when the kids go to college, university, they get a little bit of independence from the alienating parent. Sometimes that gives you the doorway to start improving the relationship. And if you've supported them, then they're more likely to want to engage with you. If you've given the opportunity for the alienating parent to say, oh no, he's mean, he's not looked after you, he doesn't care about you, he only worries about himself, all the stuff the alienator's doing, you will lose out again. It sucks. This stuff sucks. You have to be super parents. You are super parents. Every single person listening to this is a super parent already. The fact that you are doing what you're doing and the amount of love you're giving your kids, you are super parents, but you can be even more super parents. And that's what I'd encourage you to do.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, I think everything we're talking about, I think this whole stream sets that reality, because you know when you're going through this, or you've lost contact, you've exited the family home, you're going for family court, people keep saying, "Don't worry, when they grow up, they'll come and find you." And all that. And look, I understand it's a nice thing that people say, because I think they genuinely don't know what else to say. So people are being positive, and I get it, even though you'll miss out the whole childhood. But like you said, reality, 16, 19 and 16, and he's still probably going to have to wait a long time. I think this is the harsh reality that it could be a long time before they really come back in your life.
This is such a good point, Farouk, because, and again, it comes back to us and our mentality. A big part of what I do is I reframe the way that people experience alienation, because when you change the story, you change the experience. So for parents who are no contact, the thing I tell them to do, and they often find this difficult, this is a gift for you to go heal yourself. Now, what you're doing, if you want to help your kids, use that time, go learn about alienation. Go learn about what experience your kids are likely to be going through. Be ready such that when they do reach out to you, that you're prepared to be the loving, caring, supporting parent at that point in time. Know what you need to give them. You can't do that. And also learning about alienation will help you heal, because it'll help you to rationalize it. When you can rationalize it, you can kind of build your emotional resilience. The other thing is, go fix all your triggers and blockers. Go heal. I talk about universes. So there'll be the universe of you as a parent. There'll be the universe as you as the kid, or the universe of the kid. In the parent's universe, if you're a mess, then you can't help your kid.
Yeah.
And if you, in your universe, if you're sad and depressed, it doesn't affect what's going on in your kid's universe. If you're life embracing and you're getting on with everything, it doesn't affect what's going on in the kid's universe. It affects you.
Right. Okay.
So,
Yes.
and the alienator wants you to be sad and depressed. So you're doing their job for them. So everybody who is no contact, go get help. Get yourself healed. Learn about alienation. Because one of the things that happens, and I see this happening all the time, parents don't prepare and think, oh, when I get there, I'll deal with it. No, too late. When your kid reaches out to you, the parent then often thinks, this is it. I've waited 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. They've contacted me. And basically what's happening is the kids put a toe in the water to see where you're at. What are you like? How are you going to react? So they put a toe in the water, and we hit them with this tsunami of our emotional issues. And, we're just full of, oh, God, I thought you'd never realized what a bad parent, my ex was, and all the damage they've been doing and all this brainwashing they've been doing to you. And your kid just goes, whoa, I haven't seen you for 5 years. I'm not going to see you for another 5 years. You're a mess. And I see parents doing that all the time. They're not putting themselves in the kids' shoes, and they haven't healed themselves.
Okay, I think that's quite a strong message here, guys, or guys and girls and women. Go and heal yourself. Put yourself in the kids' shoes. Prepare yourself for when the day comes, and heal yourself before the day comes. Ultimately, so okay, there's some really good advice there. Before we move on, Charlie, just a couple of things I want to try and cover ultimately. So look, again, I was one of these people who was naive enough to believe that, due to pre-alienation, what happened was due to pre-alienation, ultimately, and to fix the issue of pre-alienation, not me specifically, but I know a lot of people, a lot of clients, same old story, where they thought, right, it's best I just get out of this. At least when I'm out of this relationship, I'll have my own access. Again, they unfortunately assume that because we live in a country with laws and order and process and procedure, they actually assume the father has some rights for some weird, bizarre reason. So when they exit the relationship, you're like, bloody hell, is this how it is? Now you've got no rights. And now, whereas I think the reality that whilst you were living with a child, you were being pre-alienated. What do you think was going to happen when you exit the relationship? They've lost full. Firstly, you've now got one over, ultimately, the alienator. They're peed off, and the alienation just goes into full alienation mode, like completely. So I think a lot of fathers that I know have fallen into that trap, ultimately. So, I just want people that are in these relationships to really have a think. The second point.
Can I just build on that for 1 second?
Yes.
And hold that thought, the second point, because we haven't really talked very much about alienators, but they are all remarkably similar.
But hold on, Charlie, before you go there, that's exactly the next thing I want to talk about is the alienator. But before you go on to the alienator, right, so let's just break it down on a simple level that we all may have understood before we realize the depth of what we're going to talk about now, the alienator. Now, look, any relationship, let me take it from, I'll take it from the South Asian community perspective of old school village mentality relationship. Relationship ends. Mum, they carry this child. They have that different maternal bond with a child, and there's always that element of your dad's a basket. He's left us, whatever. Right? You're not. That just standard village mentality. Right? You're not seeing the kids. This and that. Mother automatically aligns with the kid because it's her kid, because it came out of her. There's that very simple village mentality, and you think, yeah, what, typical sort of thing. Yeah, all right, whatever. They're angry for a little while, and it's not seen as that serious. It's just a very sort of simple perception. But as we now delve into this is a lot more layered and a lot more deeper than what may have been seen as, say, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, or someone from a basic village mentality,
Yeah.
So yeah, take it from there.
But they're still, most people are still stuck in that village mentality. They're still caught in the lens of their experience, which is why one of the things I would encourage alienated parents to do is dial down on trying to educate all the people around you, because it's a thankless task and it's emotionally draining for us. And I make the analogy between alienation and being a parent. If you've never had a kid, you can't explain to somebody who's never had a kid what childhood is like. You just can't. And this is the same thing. If you've not been through alienation, it's really hard to explain to somebody the emotional journey that this is going to take you through. But just back to the alienators, because the alienators, they all do the same stuff. One of the big observations I've made is I've not yet come across a single case of alienation. I've helped hundreds of parents. I've not come across a single case where the alienator hadn't gone through some form of trauma when they were growing up. It was either trauma or they'd been spoiled. They were favored. And they grow up and they're putting up all these coping mechanisms because they don't want to revisit the trauma. They're also typically emotionally stunted. They're very childlike. They're not parents. They're buddies to our children. So there's no boundaries. They don't worry about, are they dressed right? Are their clothes clean? How are they doing at school? They don't worry about those things. And when we go, our kids are used against us because the alienators don't care about the psychological damage or any other damage being done to our kids. And you have to grasp that, all of us as parents. Please grasp the fact they hate us. They absolutely hate us. And there are 5 big triggers for an alienator. And if you press any one of these, they're going to alienate your kids even more. So the first one is when you break up with them, that's a massive trigger. That's when a lot of us see that switch where all that pre-alienation comes into play, and bang, our kids are suddenly really different, really fast. And you can see the pressure on them. You can see the fear that they're being put through. Second one, court. So we think court is there to protect us. The alienators are used to trying to control everything. They're trying to manipulate the world around them because they're terrified of it. Now, somebody else in the form of a judge or the court system has the power. It terrifies the alienator. Guess what? They think they're going to lose. We all know they don't like losing. I'm going to alienate your kid. And sometimes we have to question whether or not we should even go to court, because depending on the kid's age, if you don't think you're going to win, it's going to cost you a lot of money and your kids are going to be even more alienated. Really think that one through to everybody. The third one, money. This is probably one of the biggest triggers for the alienators. They care about money, wealth, because it gives them security. As I say, the alienators are massively insecure. They're massively vulnerable people. We often see them as being powerful. They're not powerful. That power is their own fear coming through because they're terrified of the world. So if you threaten them with money, i.e., if they don't think they're getting enough from you, they're going to alienate your kids. Fourth one, you have a good relationship with your kid. They're going to alienate them even more because their objective is to damage your relationship. So if they see you succeeding, it was back to the question that you were asking earlier, or one of the guys asked. He said, how do I stop the alienation? Catch-22. If you put concerted efforts in to stop the alienation, the alienator will get angry that they're losing and they're going to alienate the kid more. And the last one of those big five is when you get into a relationship with somebody else. Now, the alienator is allowed to have as many relationships as they want, and that's okay. They can have completely inappropriate partners. They can be introducing these people into our children's lives. That's fine as they're concerned. But if we have a new boyfriend or girlfriend, they flip out because one, we're happy, and two, we might introduce somebody else into the lives of our kids, and they start, all their vulnerability is going to come out. It's like, oh, maybe I'm going to be replaced as a mom or a dad. And guess what? They alienate our kids again. So we have to be really aware of what is going to cause an increase in damage to our relationships. What's going to prod the bear. So when you go through separation, you're going through divorce, and you're talking about money. You've got three of the big five right there. So it's no wonder that those first few years are some of the worst. And again, nobody tells you about this stuff. And we sit there and we're thinking, why is it all happening to me? Well, it's happening because you're dealing with a traumatized person.
Charlie, can I just ask a question on what you just said? So one thing. So look, you said money, right? So even during a relationship, after a relationship, in a lot of cases where the money card, the financial card, and again, unfortunately, the CMS, the family court system, sound like it's perfectly designed around these sort of personalities for some reason. They've given them all the tools and weapons. This is what I'm saying. The family court systems, if you look at everything said about control, money. So if you try and manage your money, the argument then they come out with, that's called financial abuse. Like they've given them a card, they've given them a weapon. When you try and control somebody's erratic, wild behavior, that's now called coercive control. They've given them another weapon. My point is, the family court system and the laws that the CMS have in position and how they operate, it was designed for these personalities. Like bang on, they designed it to fit because they knew these personalities will come forward. So someone's obviously studied it. But the other thing I wanted to touch on was this. So let's go back to that money element. Is the money the byproduct of the fact that they want security? So it's not necessarily the money, but it's the money that gives them security. Hence,
Absolutely.
They badger you for money during a relationship. They want an unlimited budget, or they want this or that or whatever. And, many stories of a lot of guys giving in, working all hours just to give and provide, but it was never enough, unfortunately. But is it the fact that they're insecure and they want that security, and money gives you some form of security?
Totally. And so there's the most basic form of security, as in I have enough money so that, I'm not afraid. But then very often you'll find that the alienators, they're about money, wealth. And it's not wealth, but they're about stuff. They want the house. They want the furniture in the house. They want the car. They want us to be destitute and for them to have everything. That's kind of, I need everything, you need nothing. What they care more about the money than they do about our kids. We care about the kids, so we're prepared to trade money for kids. They're prepared to trade kids for money. And if we don't give them enough money, they will hold back our kids. or if they don't feel we're going. But whatever we do, and this is the catch, it doesn't matter how much money we give them, it will never be enough for these people. And whatever we do will always be wrong. That is just the nature of an alienator.
Yes.
If you are a good parent, the kids will be told, your dad or your mom is trying to buy you. If you don't give the kids everything because you don't want to spoil them, the kids will hear your mum or your dad has abandoned you. They want to get on with their life. They're spending all the money on you. Sorry, they're spending all the money on themselves. And they're really devious about this stuff. I mean, I don't talk much about my own personal experience, but when I was going through this, so I left the house to my ex in order that she would have that security. Actually, I wasn't giving it to my ex, I was giving it to my kids. I had to be very generous with my ex in order to give my kids the benefit of at least they could stay in the house, at least they could stay in the school. You know, the rest of the world has been turned upside down. I wanted to give them, you know, as much security as I could, but I had to give it to my ex in order to give it to them. But that meant I had to live somewhere else. And so I had to buy furniture. So what happens? She takes the credit card statement, because we were going through divorce and you had to fill out all the forms. So she takes the credit card statement for the month I bought all the furniture and presents it to the children as, this is what your dad is spending on himself every month. And look at what he gives us.
Wow.
And it's just, you know, everything is used against you. It is so divisive. And you can't turn around to the kids, because you can't have the conversation about alienation and say, yeah, but I left everything to you. I left everything in the house. And guess what? I was furnishing your bedrooms with that money. But you can't have that conversation, because if you go anywhere near it, the kids are back into that loyalty conflict again. So divisive, the whole thing.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, Charlie. It's how can I put it? If I come back to my character, it's the madness to the whole thing, and this is where those who have never dealt with these sort of personalities, again, we go back to that, you know, overt, covert, narcissistic personality disorders. If you've never dealt with someone like this, or you've never had to interact with these sort of people on this level, people have no idea what you are dealing with. It's almost like I said, the film Gone Girl. I keep hearing that name. I don't know if you've heard of. Yeah, I've seen it on one of your posts. Gone Girl, the film, right? Classic Ben Affleck. Yeah, that film sort of summarized it. You are dealing with someone on a spectrum, like psychotic spectrum. Ultimately, I mean, how can
so one of a big thing that everybody who's listening to this will be experiencing. Not only do your friends and family not understand what you are going through, and I would say educate your family, forget about all your friends, because it's just too much hassle. But your family needs to go through the same healing process that you need to go through, and they're all going to be coming from their own perspectives. So you need to be the super parent. It's like the opposite of a bereavement. When somebody dies, everybody knows what to do. They circle around you. They make sure you get the support. This is the opposite. Nobody knows how to support you, and you end up having to support them.
Yes.
While you're going through this mind-numbing experience. But with the I've lost my train of thought. I was going to go back.
The extended family also needs, I think you're saying.
I was going to go back onto the alienated there again for a second.
Psychotic behavior, alienator.
Yeah, no. Because the psychologists are not recognizing this, you then don't get help from the therapists and the psychologists who are out there, because they look at everything at face value. If a kid comes in and says, my dad or my mum, I feel unsafe with them, or they're abusing me, or whatever it is, they've been groomed to say that by the alienating parent. And the psychologists go, even when you try to say this is a case of parental alienation, the psychologists say, oh yeah, that must be happening. The mum or the dad, the target parent, must be a bad person, because that's what the kid is saying. And that's why reunification doesn't work, because there's a number of things going on. First of all, you've got a kid who's turning up to a therapist. Now, the kid doesn't want to go to a therapist because the message is there's something wrong with you. Then the kid's thinking, okay, so you're going to talk about alienation. I don't want to talk about alienation. And then you're going to put me in the room with the person that I'm not supposed to be with. And that is just a recipe for disaster. And then the psychologist is listening to this kid being traumatized being with you, which is not surprised they're traumatized being with you, and saying, I feel unsafe, I don't want to be with this person. The psychologist concludes and reinforces that, yeah, that must be the problem. It's you. And they're now reinforcing the kid's perspective that it's you.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't work. So, CAFCAS, CPS, DCF, most of these people are not trained in parental alienation. So they're asked to do reviews to assess whether or not, what's going on. Is your child being unduly coerced? They rarely come back with anything that is of any use whatsoever. And if your kids are of a certain age, and it depends on which part of the world you're in, often it can be anything as low as even 11 or 12 years old, there's the voice of the child, which is basically the judicial system saying we should take into account the child's wishes. And of course, the child's wishes are this groomed message. They're just parroting what the alienating parent has told them to say. So the social workers get it, and then the judicial system gets it. And guess what? We end up not having access to our kids. The whole thing is frigged against us. And the impact on us, it just gets us mentally and emotionally, which is back to your universe. This is why you guys, every single one of you listening today, you have to work on your universe. If you want to get through this, you have to work on you.
Okay, good stuff, Charlie. I have to say, I'm getting some really good feedback. Obviously, not me, it's all you, bro. So it's all for you, yeah. It's not me. We've got over 40 people watching live there. So
Cool.
let's carry on a little bit more. I just want to
Yeah.
try. There's so much to cover. I think we're going to have to do another one soon to continue on from this, right? Yeah.
Very happy to.
Now, let's continue talking about the alienator, right? Now, I want to ask you this, right? So, look, the alienator, we talk about the finance gives them security.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the alienator, we're going more into that personality disorder, do you think on some level that they have love for you, the targeted parent? Do you think they love you on some weird level? Hence, ultimately, is not just about the security and the money. And I think the children are the pre-alienation and alienation are collateral damage. Ultimately, children are collateral damage, and that's a byproduct of the fact that the bigger issues, they want control. So do they want security, control, a combination of security, control, which then amounts to alienation and targeting you financially, and at the same time making your life hell? But do you think that in some weird way they actually care about you?
No, in some, it is possible that in some very, very bizarre way they do care about you, and the fact that you're no longer involved in their life is reason enough for them to really want to hurt you.
But whilst you're in their life, they want to control you, because that's where the control elements come into it. While you're there,
So you most of us go through a phase where we meet the we meet the person who becomes the alienator, and they might seem a little bit strange. There might be a few red flags for us, but on balance, we kind of think it's going to be okay. And we end up having a relationship with that person where we become a crutch. We're kind of overly supportive in a lot of instances to their vulnerabilities. So they typically get tired of us. We might be getting tired of them, but they're normally ahead of us because they're so afraid of the world that attack is the best form of defense. So they're often thinking, oh, well, this relationship is coming to an end. So I tell you what, I'm going to get the kids behind me. I'm going to get your friends behind me. I'm going to get the school behind me. We don't even think like that. So by the time, the relationship starts more visibly breaking apart, and we might think about, okay, well, how's this going to pan out? They've already persuaded most of the people in our lives of their opinion. And once you've got something in somebody's head, it's very difficult to get it out. So they want to get rid of us, and they plan getting rid of us. And then sometimes we're the people who eventually have to bring it to a head because we can't stand the whole situation any longer. And a tough thing for us. We are right getting out of those relationships. I know our children suffer, but we have to get out for the sake of our own well-being, because the kids are going to suffer inside the relationship or outside of the relationship. But we have to exit, and we have to be okay with that, regardless of the fallout. It was going to be a bad outcome, even if we'd stayed in the relationship. But yeah, to answer the question, I think there might be some deep part of them that is mad at us, because even though they've made our lives impossible, we're no longer part of their life. And it's another reason.
Power away.
It's another reason to hate us, not to love us. It's another reason to hate us, and they hate us vehemently.
So you think, okay, so Joe, also what I just picked up on what you said, you said, do you think ultimately then, look, because I think I speak to a lot of fathers that go through this mindset, and I mentioned it earlier, that you think once you're in this situation dealing with all the aspects of alienation that you've said, and the alienation is one aspect, but even if, say, for argument's sake, there's no alienation, I think the reality is when you lose contact with your child, that trauma in itself alone, right? Just take that pain as the purest form of pain on its own, yeah? The alienation is the secondary form of pain on top of that is added. That's just the salt that's rubbed into the wounds, right, yeah?
Yep.
That alone can destroy you completely, right, yeah?
Yeah.
So knowing that pain and knowing what we know about these personalities when you're in the relationships, the pre-alienation and what you're dealing with and the power dynamics and the constant daily battle, some fathers say, you know what, maybe I should have stayed. Maybe it was a wrong decision pulling out, this and that. And I sort of think in my head, look, when you're living with someone like that on a long-term basis, you're suppressing your emotions and you're seeing this injustice play out and you're suppressing it in your heart, that will manifest itself physically, mentally, emotionally into you in such a way where it will come out one way or the other. You'll come out damaged.
Absolutely.
Or God forbid, you'll just lose your rag one day and the situation will be even worse potentially. And you hear some horror stories.
Or people commit suicide.
Yes,
that's the worst case scenario.
Hence, so the conclusion I've come to, and I've had these battles in my own head, and I still think that you don't know what it would have looked like if you'd have stayed even longer than the time where you lost it and just walked out, or you ended the relationship. So regardless of the situation now and the pain you're going through, the conclusion that I've now come to, even talking about this now, is it is still best to pull out, get out. Yeah. It's a toxic environment. It is only going to lead to a more damaging situation for all parties involved. It's best you remove yourself from that environment, though it's a very difficult thing to do with your kids and all of that. It's a different pain, but best to get out.
Yeah, because very often if you have got, some people get out and they get back in again, and normally when they get back in, it's even worse, because the alienator feels that they've got control over you, even more control over you. And the conditions for coming back in is normally you have to, prostrate yourself and just accept everything they say.
Yes.
They want you to come back begging, because it's a control thing. So they take even more control. But we have to recognize that, like you say, there's only so much we can take. There's only so much that we can take. And also, when we are around with our children, and if they are strongly alienating our children when we're in a relationship, sometimes it takes the pressure off the kids to get out of the relationship. So here's a weird thing about no contact. Sometimes that is the best thing for the kid, because when there's no contact, they don't have the constant bombardment of, oh, you're going to see your parent this Wednesday, or you're going to see your parent this weekend, or, oh, who are you on the telephone to? Why are you so, what's the social messaging going on? That stuff is just day in, day out when they're in contact with us.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think about that. Do you know what? I had to go no contact with one of my kids. And I chose to do that because I could see that the relationship every time we met was getting worse and worse and worse. And I thought, okay, I'm going to draw a line in the sand here. I'm going to gift my child with love in my heart. I'm going to gift the space and take the pressure off. And I'm going to stop the rot. and I'll come back to it at a later point in time when she's more able to have a relationship.
Yes.
That is super parent territory,
Not
because
just that.
you have to be so full of love for your child to give them that gift that you are prepared to not have them in your life for a period of time.
But there's another benefit to that, Charlie. I mean, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power, the surrender tactic. Because the alienator, when you are craving and aching and yearning to see that child, you are feeding that power dynamic of them knowing they have that control and that switch
Absolutely.
where they're causing you pain. Once you release that switch and say, you know what, I'm good. And I hate to say it, it's not general advice for everyone, but in certain cases of advice, fathers use a surrender tactic. Don't want to know. See you later. Good luck. Goodbye. They've lost all power. And guess what? They've then tried to roll the dad back in because you've got no power left. If you've got no hold over someone, they've got no power over you. That will hurt the narcissist more.
So all of these insecurities and vulnerabilities, I totally agree with you, by the way, Farouk. All of these insecurities and vulnerabilities that we bring in to our adult life, this is the stuff that all bubbles up to the surface for us when we're going through parental alienation. And it's we're having these battles within ourselves, but we're experiencing it in the form of grief for our kid, or guilt for our kid, or rejection. And once you deal with your own insecurities, your own vulnerabilities, and your own fears, it transforms your experience of alienation. Because when you're able to turn around, for instance, this misalignment between, say, you've got no contact with your kid, and your internal blueprint is saying, but I should have contact with my kid. You're going to hurt as long as your internal blueprint says, but I should have contact with my kid, and this is where my life should be. As long as that expectation gap exists,
Yes.
you're in pain. You're in pain. You're controlling that.
Okay.
And you equally can turn around and use exactly as you said, that surrender approach. I encourage people to be very accepting in their lives. Now, I'm not saying give up. Acceptance is not about giving up. Acceptance is about dealing with and being really honest with yourself to say, okay, it is as it is. And by the way, when people who've not been through alienation say to you, just deal with it and it is as it is, ignore them. They don't know what they're talking about. But as somebody who's been through it, to get to that deep psychological space within yourself where you really reach a point of acceptance,
Yes.
then the pain goes away. And I say, never give up hope, because you just don't, even when you're no contact, you just don't know when the dynamics are going to change. Your kid can reach out in an hour, in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, in 10 years. You just don't know. So you want to be healed. You want to be understanding and ready for them when they do reach back out to you. But you need to be healed in the meanwhile. Don't put your life on hold. You're just going to suffer. And the alienator wins. And it's you doing it to yourself. That's the crazy part about this. That hamster
Okay.
wheel, it's us maintaining it.
Okay, Charlie. So look, I've said this to fathers. So tell me. So I'm taking in everything you're saying. Yeah. Now, like you said, it's your own subconscious bringing your own emotions and your filters of how they've interpreted the alienation that is then playing out, right, through your grief. Now, I've said to fathers and, a lot of people that I've spoken to along this journey, I've spoken to fathers at times who are 4 or 5 years into their journey. And after talking to me, they're like, how do you look so well put together? And I thought I was suffering. And when I looked at these guys, I thought, bloody hell, you're 4 or 5 years down the line, you're still a mess. Like, what's going on with you? Now, I've said, tell me if this is correct now. You can maybe evaluate my own sort of psychological sort of state, where I said that grief and that situation of you as just on a very, I'll take it from a simplistic human level of not even my own filters, but this is my child. And as let's call it a God-given right, a right of humanity from part of the human race. This is my offspring. This is my blood. I should be, I love this child. The child loves me. And there should be no force or society or anything in the world that can stop me from being with my own child. there's that element of just a basic, let's call it a primal instinct.
Yes.
Core primal instinct to want to be with your child and protect your child, and just maybe never protect, but just love and be happy with your child. Yeah.
Mhm.
You give them love, they give you love. It's a two-way pleasure. It's a two-way emotion, right? You're not getting that, you're upset. So you've got the situation in that moment, like you said, accept the situation for what it is. But I've said to fathers, that whole feeling of I need to be with my child, compartmentalize it and put it, say, over here for now. Just stick it over here, because in order to get to that, we need to deal with this, and we need a clear, cognitive, unemotional approach to say, right, what needs to be done? That'll be there, but it needs to be there. It can't be there because we can't work like this. If it's there, we can't work. That needs to be there. So would that be, does that make sense to you, what I'm saying? Like
That does. I encourage people to compartmentalize in that same way. I also encourage them to go one step further, which is what the bit that you just popped up there and said, like, let's put that to one side.
like the Swiss model, put it there. That's it. It's a
Yeah,
small
let's
picture,
just that is a past memory or a past trauma. And what I do is I use various tricks, mind tricks, to get people to explore what are these past traumas, because it's not just affecting them with alienation. So a big part of what we feel with the alienation is, a sense of rejection.
Yes.
Because our kids are rejecting us. And if we have any insecurities, it goes straight to that insecurity. And what you want to do, what I help parents with it, is dig out, where did that sense of insecurity come from? So the trigger is just a symptom. I say to parents, this is gold dust for you. This is like, this thing that's triggering you has been around. You've probably dragged it with you for the last 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. So let's use this as an opportunity to tackle it. Because once you tackle it, you can get rid of it. And what I encourage people to do is when you get rid of it, you can then put something different into your kind of programming. So that be the person you want your kids to experience. So you want to positively put things into your subconscious about being the confident parent, practicing being the person you want to be with your kids. But I'll just give you an example. One woman, she was a mum. She has this thing about being called a liar, and her ex was always accusing her of lying, especially to the kids. It drove her nuts. She, using some of these kind of techniques that I help parents with, she took it all the way back to when she was an 8-year-old girl. She basically, her sister was 10 years older, was getting married. Some candles got broken on the wedding day. This 18-year-old girl had a meltdown, and lambasted. She needed somebody to take it out on, and it happens to be the woman I was working with, all these years later. So this woman remembers being an 8-year-old kid, lambasted on the bottom of the staircase with her sister just freaking out at her for like 30 minutes and calling her liar, 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 liar. That instantly traumatized her. And she took that with her for over 45 years until we were working together. And it was one of the things that was really triggering her, because, of course, as an alienated parent, you have all this false narrative given to our kids about us. And, she just felt that she was being called a liar all the time. And it was this injury from when she was 8. And when she was able to kind of revisit that and go, okay, I now see where that's coming from, nobody could push that button again because it was gone.
Yeah, you've removed that button. So
Take the button away.
Yeah.
And so I think the compartmentalization is really good, because it's a nice stepping stone to then let somebody work on it as the next stage, but you stop the pain in the interim.
Right. So I see what you mean. Okay, now this is getting very deep. Okay, Charlie, I think there's a lot of ground. Just quick question, I've qualified recently as a coach, and I've done the NLP techniques. I'm using NLP techniques and stuff with fathers. Do you use NLP in your coaching?
I don't. I'm familiar with it, but I don't. What I've kind of created my own homegrown version of the ways to navigate alienation. So
Okay.
I used to be a business advisor, and my job was basically to go around to lots of different businesses and do some analysis and then take it up to the board and say, okay, guys, do these 3 things, forget about the rest of it, do these three things, life will be good. And I basically used that kind of approach with alienation. So hence I talk about the kids, you, the alienators. It's kind of 3 areas you can break it down. They're all on a spectrum. The solutions that work for you will be unique to where each of your kids are on that spectrum, where you are on that spectrum of your experiences, where the alienator is. And then it's a case of kind of mix and match to say, okay, for your kid with where you are right now and what is happening with the alienator, this sort of solution will work for you. And so I get asked a lot of great questions, but the solutions lie in having a better understanding of somebody's unique experience, so I can really help them. So especially when we're getting into the space of people's own psychological states. Some people deal with this stuff really, really well. Some people present as dealing with it really well, but in fact, they're just oppressing themselves.
Yeah.
And some people are just a complete mess.
But Charlie, I've got to be straight with you, man. I mean, look, last 3 nights, 2 to 3 nights, I have, again, it comes in little phases and cycles. I had dreamt I saw
It's
my
like
children again.
bereavement. It's in waves. But go on.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I saw my kids again, and in the dream when you break out a character and you're shouting my son's name from up the road, and I'll say someone sees me and quickly to take him, trying to hide him, and that behavior, even the behavior matches up in your dream as to the little nuances in that personality disorder, how they behave and control, and how they talk to a child. I mean, you can see it, but it comes and goes, and you wake up emotional and you snap yourself out of it again. I mean, it is
a top tip for every parent is to break that loop, that emotional coaster, the emotional roller coaster, that looping round with a conversation. So the thing we talked about earlier, where it starts in your conscious mind, it drops into your subconscious. Your subconscious works on it, puts it back in your conscious mind. Your conscious mind says, "Thank you very much. I'll give it back to my subconscious again." And you just loop around and around and around. You have to break the loop. Yes. And you break the loop by getting really aware of what you're thinking all the time, like all the time. And you have to start putting some different stuff into your head. And I would just tell you guys, you can do this. And I know you can do this. So even when you're going through some really dark stuff, there will be some good things in your life. So let's say you're going on a holiday. Even though you're not seeing your kids, you're going on a holiday somewhere. As soon as that thought of I'm going on a holiday starts, guess what? You've now given that to your subconscious. And it goes, "Oh, Farouk, you want to go on a holiday? Right, great. So say you want to go to, Greece for a few days just to get away from it all." Your subconscious is now thinking, okay, which airline am I going to use? What hotel am I going to stay in? What food am I going to eat? What's the weather going to be like? What clothes do I need to take? What experiences am I going to see? Am I going to be on the beach? Am I going to be in the city? You will have an entire imaginary experience of that holiday for days, weeks, months before you ever leave for the airport. Guess what? You're now dreaming about that stuff. You're now thinking about it when you're at work. You're thinking about it when you're making meals. The times that you were previously thinking about grief and guilt and isolation and sadness are now filled with Greece.
Yes.
And it's because you're focused on Greece. So you have to keep focusing on things that are positive in your life and get rid of the things that are negative in your life. So you have to ideally deal with those triggers, deal with those deep subconscious wounds, put positive stuff into your life. Guess what? When you're with your kids, you're a different person, because your kids will be the same. Your kids will still have all the issues. They'll still be, finding it challenging getting through their experience of alienation. But you're a different person because you're not having your buttons pushed. You're able to
Yes.
focus on them. What do they need from me in this moment right now? Love, support, empathy, kindness. And you can do that because you're not worrying about yourself. You're in a good space. You're pumping oxygen through your body. You've got that oxygen mask on.
Yes, I think throughout this whole stream, Charlie, there's two things that I've learned that I never sort of knew ultimately. I'll go to the first one, right? So the first thing that I've learned about alienation as a whole, which I never ever looked at it like this or thought about it like this now, where you said when you go through this process, it is more a journey of self-discovery and your own programming as a child, past traumas come to the surface. So this is an opportunity
Yes.
to learn about yourself, work
Yes.
through your own filters, your own subconscious programming, and work through and any triggers or negative triggers that you have from the past. You can fix them, iron them out, and release them. So this is an opportunity for self-discovery, self-healing, self-love, and repair. That's number one. The other thing that I've just picked up on what you just said now with your last bit of information that you just divulged, that oh bloody, I lost my train of thought now. Sorry. So you said you got to feed the subconscious. Now, okay, this is what I've said. When you're in this state of trauma, your nervous system's shot to bits, you heightened awareness, you've got adrenaline, as I call it, you're in the trenches. When you're surviving in the trenches, you're physically, mentally, emotionally, your pain tolerance, you're capable potentially of things that you're not normally. So, like you said there, and this is what I said to fathers, while you've got this laser focus, instead of feeding yourself on that negativity and grief, take this opportunity to start reading. Hence, you might have noticed this. I've noticed my bookshelf building here, right? Yeah, I've never read, but I'm a keen reader these days. I try and read regularly to feed the subconscious, because you keep feeding the subconscious information, knowledge that will come out somewhere else. You don't know where it will manifest and come out. Like you talked about self-improvement, physical training. You have, and I've almost said it, that this is almost like a superpower. Now, and I remember before I was properly like homeless up until recently, where the ability I had to focus. So your nervous system shot to bits. The trauma has given you that alertness and awareness. I could go from 0 to 60 any minute, any time. I could summon physical strength at any given moment, just like that, and energy. Even in my voice, you could see it coming out. I'm a lot calmer these days now, but that is a superpower if you can harness it or channel that grief. Again, in layman's terms, I say you channel that grief, that anger, that pain, that negativity, all to fuel, to get you align it with the outcome that you want. So you visualize, you manifest, and you put in the work with this heightened alertness that you have. I mean, that is the other thing that you've articulated it. What I was thinking, feeling, how I should say it in my own way, you've articulated it in obviously a lot better way. So yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're bang on. Another way I describe it to people is our past, all those past memories. It's a bit like us driving a car by only ever looking in the rearview mirror. And all the pain that we're feeling, that's us looking in the rearview mirror.
Yes.
And you want to take the rearview mirror and chuck it out the window and look out the windshield. Look out the windscreen. Look at where you're going, not where you've come from. And we get very drawn in to the past. And here's another crazy part of how our subconscious works. When we're making choices and decisions, so if you want your future to be different, you have to start making different choices. But if your choices always refer back to the same subconscious blueprint, which is full of your insecurities and your limiting beliefs, you're going to make choices in line with those insecurities. So if you don't deal with those things, you're going to make very similar choices. So your future's not going to change. So the more you can get rid of those limiting beliefs, and the braver that you can become going forwards, and make braver, better decisions, your life will start changing.
Yes.
Literally, your life will start changing. And if you're making better decisions and you're healed and you're with your kids, you won't be able to change a certain amount of the stuff that's going on with your kids. You have to just accept that. That is what it's going to be for a period of time. I'm sorry that we all face that reality, fact. But if you're viewing things differently, saying, okay, this is, my son and my daughter, they're going to be behaving this way for a while. That's my new reality. So I'm going to deal with that every day it happens until it stops happening. That's my reality. And my hope is that at some point it'll stop. But I'm not going to feel the pain of it every single time I see them, because I don't do that anymore. I'm now looking at the windshield. I'm looking to a space that at some point I will be able to have a good relationship with them. So I'm going to start planning for that. I'm going to start thinking about me as an evolving parent. By the way, you stop being a parent, you become coaches, because our relationships have changed with our kids. Accept that as well. It is your reality. We no longer have the same power that we did. They're not looking to us for advice. They want us to be supportive, but they don't want us to parent them or to put lots of boundaries around them. Those days are gone. Accept that. Move on. Be who they want you to be. And you have to keep changing all the time. I said, I'm 15 years into the alienation and post-alienation phase. I'm having to evolve today. Even now, I'm still on a journey with my kids, trying to help them as best I can. And I have to be, I have to show them every inch of the way I'm healed. And when they see me being healed, they're able to have more trust. And that's what you're rebuilding. You're building trust with your kids. And when you build trust, that's where your bond comes back. So when they say something about an experience they're having with an alienating parent and you react negatively, you're not building trust. If you're neutral, or even, get this, positive about the experience they're having with the alienating parent, your kids go, oh, Dad's okay with this. I feel safer with Dad, or I feel safer with Mum. That's trust. It's counterintuitive. It's crazy stuff. But this is the game we need to learn to play.
Yes. Charlie, I think the conversation could very easily go on for another 2 hours. I've got so many questions
Absolutely.
of my own. There are so many questions in the comments. There's people messaging me questions on my phone. Unfortunately, we're not going to get around to all of that today.
No, absolutely. This is a deeply complex subject that we try
Yes.
our best to make. All the stuff we've been talking about tonight is frameworks to help people make sense of it, in order that they can then start working their way through it bit by bit. That's the trick to this. Find a framework, work your way and be prepared to get into that mental gym, that mental and emotional gym, and get ready to do some proper working out and grow and change yourself. Do that, the rest of it starts changing around you.
Absolutely, Charlie. I think I'm going to pin you down now and say, listen, we're going to have to do this again soon and carry this on. I say in another 4 to 5 weeks' time or earlier, as soon as you're available, I'll tap you up. We'll have to hit this again one evening, because there's still a lot more to cover. I think this was not a one session or one stream. Yes, never. I think we need a 9-stream program where we're going to put one out every month to take people from this journey from the start to the end. Before we wrap up and go, Charlie, do you want to just give them a link to your email or your channel, or how they can get hold of you?
Yeah, so you can find me in 3 different places. So I've got a website, which is charliemccready.com. I'm also on Facebook as Charlie Mccready. I'm also on Instagram as Charlie Mccready. And I'm also on Facebook as Overcoming Parental Alienating Behaviors. And basically, all I do day in, day out is I'm helping parents, normally through either I have something called the 9-step program, which is basically soup to nuts, looking at you, looking at the kids, looking at the alienators, what's going to work for you. And then I also help people with just coaching, because some people don't want to do a whole program. They just want to have an hour's worth of, I've got a specific problem. or sometimes they just want a few hours worth. But I know where all of you guys are coming from, you know, mums and dads. And I know it's mainly a dad's audience today, but I've been there. I get this. I've been there personally, and I know that you can all come through this. You can absolutely, every single person listening here tonight will get through this.
Absolutely. Charlie, listen, thank you for obviously giving us the time, Charlie. We're going to bring you back in, and I think it's been an education on so many levels. I think I speak for myself definitely, and many others. I think this has been quite an education into alienation and what alienation really is. And like I said, the biggest thing I will also take from this, and I'll say to everyone, is alienation is a road to self-discovery. Like Charlie said, this is an opportunity to learn about yourself, learn and grow and fix yourself, be kind to yourself, and take this opportunity, take this situation, it's a sad situation, and make something better out of this, you know, grow from this ultimately. So look, I won't bang on too long. It's gone over 2 hours. Guys, like, subscribe, follow and share, follow Charlie. If you've got any further questions or you want me to connect you with Charlie or anything like that, you know where my email is. Email's in the description. Also, there's a PayPal link in the description if you want to help support the channel, sponsor and donate, help support the channel. I'll keep the content coming out. We're going to be here every Sunday, 8 o'clock, regular live stream to get information out there. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and share. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.